A hearty day to all our marvelous fans. We hope you've been keeping well. In today's video, we will discuss some of Venom's most dangerous enemies from the Marvel Universe. Venom's one of the most beloved anti-heroes on screen, and an overall complex character. The Venom symbiote debuted in Spider-Man's black suit, but it reached heights of popularity after bonding with Eddie Brock. Venom was initially a villain, and a pretty interesting one at that, but later the character evolved. Throughout this time, Venom made few friends and faced countless enemies. Of course, some were a cakewalk for the symbiote, but a few others made it sweat. While Spider-Man and Carnage are the most well-known enemies of Venom, there are a host of others who have locked horns with the anti-hero, sometimes more than once. So without any further ado, let's dive into this list of the deadliest enemies of Venom. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Carnage. One of the most popular villains in Marvel overall, Carnage is actually a symbiote offspring of Venom. Carnage is most often seen bonded with the sociopathic serial killer Cletus Cassidy. This symbiote was born through an asexual process when the Venom symbiote had come to rescue Eddie Brock from jail, and it bonded with Cletus through an open wound on his arm. It became black and red in color, and Cletus named it Carnage. This marked the beginning of an intense enmity between not just Carnage and Venom, but also Carnage and Spider-Man himself. The Carnage symbiote may be an offspring of Venom, but is far more powerful due to the nature of symbiotes. Moreover, Carnage is extremely sadistic and has sociopathic tendencies like its host Cletus Cassidy. When Carnage was separated from its first host, Norman Osborn, also known as the Green Goblin, took possession of it and became the Red Goblin. While he was assaulting his own family, an offshoot of the symbiote bonded with his grandchild, Normie, who became the Goblin Child. Norman Osborn was finally separated from the Carnage symbiote when Spider-Man tricked him and immolated the symbiote. However, there remained traces of Carnage in Cletus's body, and it tried to rejuvenate itself to save him from atmospheric re-entry, but in the process, it died. This left the symbiote of the Goblin Child as the only remaining offshoot of Carnage. However, the symbiote was eventually removed from Normie and kept at the Alchemax to be studied. The codex of the symbiote remained in the bodies of its hosts, and when Cletus consumed the codices of Scorn, his symbiote at the time, an offshoot of Grendel, brought the original symbiote back to life. However, the two had a falling out, with Cletus expelling the symbiote. Carnage then decided to become more like Null, a god butcher. Later, Carnage loses all its powers in the Venom War and then approaches an equally powerless Eddie Brock to bond with him. Carnage has a unique neurochemistry as compared to other symbiotes because of its gestation within the Earth's atmosphere. As a result of this, it shares an extraordinarily powerful bond with its original host, Cletus, and has framed itself to be very similar to him. It can almost be compared to that of a twin brother. The similarity is such that even if Cletus operates without the influence of the symbiote, it's hardly possible for people to distinguish between them. No other symbiote and host had such a strong bond as these two. Moreover, Carnage considers Cletus to be its ideal host and even calls him family. Symbiote biology provides Carnage with tremendous powers and abilities. Cletus, after bonding with Carnage, acquired superhuman strength, durability, and stamina. In addition to this, he also developed regenerative healing abilities such as wall crawling, telepathy, webbing, constituent matter manipulation, ESP immunity, camouflage abilities, and power absorption, among other strengths. However, like most symbiotes, Carnage is not a fan of sound and fire, and also weapons made with K chemicals. Spider-Man. Peter Parker needs no introduction, as he was the original host of the Venom symbiote and quite probably Venom's greatest rival. Peter was bitten by a radioactive spider at a science expo, which granted him an array of arachnid powers. While he initially just used his powers for entertainment, it was after the tragic death of his Uncle Ben that he decided to become a crime-fighting vigilante. Although he mostly operates alone, Spider-Man has worked alongside stalwart superhero groups such as the Avengers and the Fantastic Four. He's also acquired numerous enemies on this journey, the most notable ones being the Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, Electro, Mysterio, and of course, Venom. Spider-Man possesses a plethora of strengths and abilities, which are mainly guided by spider physiology. He has superhuman strength, speed, agility, durability, reflexes, and stamina. In addition to this, Peter also has the ability to achieve perfect equilibrium in any position. He can heal rapidly from injuries, much quicker than any average human. He's also resistant to most illnesses and diseases that can harm humans due to the nature of his accelerated metabolism. One of his most interesting powers is the Spidey sense, a sort of sixth sense that he experiences that informs him about potential danger. Other than this, Peter Parker is an extremely talented individual and is very smart with tools. His weaknesses are ethyl chloride, used in pesticides against spiders, and his Spidey sense disruption. The relationship between Venom and Spider-Man is complicated at best because, as mentioned, Peter had unknowingly bonded with the symbiote, donning what he believed was a black suit. The suit replaced his iconic blue and red suit, enhanced his powers as Spider-Man, but also twisted his personality. After being separated from Spider-Man, the symbiote bonded with a disgraced journalist named Eddie Brock, who had a deep-seated hatred for the webbed hero. This gave rise to Venom. For Spider-Man, Venom is a significant challenge because it knows all about Peter's weaknesses. This makes every encounter between them immensely tense because Peter sees Venom as a dark reflection of himself. He sees in the symbiote his own fears and insecurities because he had experienced it firsthand to lose control and give in to the darker side. The tumultuous relationship between Peter Parker and Eddie Brock as Venom has been explored in popular media, where sometimes it's just portrayed as a rivalry, and at other times it's been seen as a more nuanced representation of Venom as an anti-hero. Venom's portrayal itself has evolved from being that of a mere villain and adversary to Spider-Man to someone with a complicated personality having different shades of gray. Juggernaut. Cain Marko is a well-known villain from Marvel Comics who happens to initially be a long-term adversary of the X-Men. As a child, Cain was regularly abused by his father, but his stepbrother Charles Xavier was treated well and would excel Cain in all matters. This made Cain resentful of him from a very young age. When he was serving in the US military, Cain found the Temple of Cyttorak and acquired the Crimson Gem, the mystical power that turned him into Cyttorak's avatar on Earth. Taking the name Juggernaut, Cain would spread chaos and destruction all over the world with his newfound powers. However, later he would attempt to reform himself and ally with the X-Men and then Excalibur. Cain as Juggernaut has superhuman strength, which is greater than even some superheroes. He can leap from one place to another in a superhuman manner too, in addition to having insane stamina. He's extremely invulnerable and can match his own against the likes of the Hulk and Quicksand. Most bullets cannot do him any damage, except adamantium, which is one of the few metals that can pierce his skin. He has insane force embodiment, so if he starts to advance in a particular direction, it's pretty much impossible to stop him. He can also summon his specialized armor whenever he wants, and while it was earlier believed that it would be summoned from a different dimension, it's actually revealed that his armor is stored within his body. The powers of the Crimson Gem allow Juggernaut to heal quicker and faster than most people. With his military background, he's also extremely adept at hand-to-hand combat and prefers this style of fighting when it comes to his enemies. However, he does have some weaknesses. He's vulnerable to a very high amount of mental and mystical attacks. It's also interesting to note that if he does not use his powers in a manner that is approved by Cyttorak, his abilities will diminish because the gem will not work properly. His insane strength can also be used against him at times, as Hulk had done in their encounter. Venom and Juggernaut locked horns in 3 issues of Venom Madness. The latter tried to kidnap Beck Underwood, Venom's girlfriend. They fight until Venom merges with a different symbiote, which causes him to become more psychologically tense. Juggernaut, however, is again able to overpower him, but finally bails on killing his girlfriend when he realizes that he will not be getting paid for this since the cops have become involved. Many fans have had mixed reactions to this fight because they believe Juggernaut should have been able to kill Venom given his powers. Toxin. The Carnage symbiote spawned the Toxin symbiote, which bonded with police officer Patrick Mulligan. Until the sudden demise of Patrick, the two tried to be heroes and bring offenders to justice. After being removed from Patrick, Toxin was forced to bond with Eddie Brock to fight Venom. Later, Toxin combined itself with 2 other symbiotes to fight against Chthon. It survived the fight, but was so weak that the arrival of Null had little effect on it. Later, it bonded with a teenager named Bren Waters, who had saved it. Toxin is the 1000th symbiote in its lineage, and it was feared by both Carnage and Venom that it would be as strong as Null. After having bonded with Patrick, Toxin saved him when Carnage attacked the cop. The two later stopped a robbery from happening, but Patrick almost lost control of the symbiote. They came across Spider-Man later and were approached by both Venom and Carnage, who were disappointed to see Toxin trying to be a hero, unlike them. However, Toxin was able to defeat both of them using Spider-Man and Black Cat's help. Toxin was naive and curious when it was first born and had a tendency towards excessive violence. Fearing that it would be similar to its father, Carnage, Patrick Mulligan took it upon himself to mentor the young symbiote. However, even though Toxie would sometimes entice Patrick to give in to his darker urges, it genuinely cared about the host enough to save him when he tried to kill himself and even lectured him about suicide. However, Patrick believed that Toxin interfered only because it would not be able to find another host. Nevertheless, even after his death, Patrick's influence played a significant role in Toxin's life. Despite this, the trauma Toxin suffered following the death of its host and its capture by the crime master caused it to become bloodthirsty and savage, much like its father, Carnage. Later, however, Toxin submitted to Eddie's lead. After returning and being bonded to Bren, Toxin further evolved as a symbiote and developed a wry sense of humor. It helped Bren save his father, even though it disliked the older man. During his fight with Carnage, Toxin not only refused to deal with the parent symbiote, but also decided to team up with other heroes to defeat it. Toxin had the powers of its parent Carnage, but to a much greater extent. It was also far more resistant to sonic waves and heat. Just like most symbiotes, Toxin possesses superhuman strength, speed, stamina, reflexes, durability, and agility. Toxin is also able to bypass Spider-Man's spider sense since Peter Parker was a host to the Venom symbiote, which happens to be Toxin's predecessor. The symbiote can also alter its shape and camouflage itself well, in addition to having amazing regenerative healing abilities. Toxin also has poisonous fangs, which it developed when it was bonded to Eddie Brock. Null. The creator of the symbiotes, Null was the eldritch god of darkness. When he was residing in the primordial void that existed between the 6th and 7th cosmoses, he was awakened when the Celestials invaded his kingdom of darkness with their light. He was actually chosen by the Celestials to serve as the King in Black, but he scorned this responsibility. He created the first symbiote in the form of a sword, decapitated the head of one of the Celestials, and then used its power to refine the sword. He decided to wage war against the light in order to return the universe to void and become a figure of divine terror henceforth. However, after his sword got stolen, he found himself on a nameless planet, where he started doing experiments with his powers and realized that he could bond his living abyss with lesser creatures in the form of amorphous parasites. He created a hive, made himself the leader, and then started conquering worlds through his fleet of symbiotic dragons. When these came to Earth, Thor struck down one of them, which severed the connection Null had to them. The symbiotes dissipated and bonded themselves to the host they could find. The hive created by Null thus became infected with the concepts of honor, and the symbiotes turned on Null and imprisoned him at the core of the throne world, renaming the planet Clintar, which stands for cage. However, Null was ultimately but reluctantly freed by Eddie Brock due to the actions of Carnage. Upon arriving on Earth, Null killed Eddie. However, Eddie was later revived by the God of Light, and he was able to defeat Null. Null intensely hated Celestials and carried genocide against them by attempting to corrupt and slaughter all life. He's extremely sadistic and revels in bloodshed and destruction. He's extremely arrogant and considers all his opponents to be beneath him, which actually ends up being one of his biggest weaknesses. He rarely uses his own power to fight his battles and lets his symbiotes do the hard work for him. Null has the ability of living abyss manipulation, using which he can create symbiotes and dominate their wills. He has superhuman strength and durability and can manipulate dark energy as well as shapeshift. He's almost immortal and can sustain himself without any food or water, even in a vacuum. He can also manipulate and create portals. However, despite his seemingly invulnerable powers, Null does have some weaknesses. He is not immune to the force he refers to as the light, which the Celestials had spread through the abyss. Antivenom. Antivenom is the heroic twin sibling of the Venom symbiote. When Eddie and the Venom symbiote were separated, traces were left in the body of the host. While Eddie was suffering from cancer, he was volunteering at the Feast Center, where Martin Lee used his powers to cure the disease. However, while doing this, Lee unknowingly infused the remnants of the symbiote in Eddie's bloodstream with his white blood cells. This created a new symbiote, which manifested itself when the Venom symbiote left its then host and returned returned to Eddie. This new symbiote was called Antivenom by Eddie, and it had tremendous regenerative healing powers, as well as other powers which were different from its twin counterpart. Antivenom could produce antibodies to cure any disease and remove all impurities from the body. However, unlike other symbiotes, this one does not have a mind of its own and was controlled completely by Eddie. Antivenom was destroyed when it was used as a cure for the spider virus. Many years later, Dr. Steven used elements of the Antivenom symbiote to create a cure for Venom's toxic shock syndrome. When a high concentration of this serum was exposed to the Venom symbiote's biomass, which was then bonded to Flash Thompson, the Antivenom symbiote was artificially created. This was until Flash died at the hands of the Red Goblin, since the replica symbiote died along with him. When Null invaded Earth, the symbiote was once again revived when Flash's consciousness downloaded itself into Symbiote Dragon in the real world. Later, a sample of the Antivenom symbiote was mixed with the Carnage symbiote to produce the Misery symbiote. The mutated symbiote biology of Antivenom allowed it to have superhuman speed, stamina, and durability, as well as tremendous regenerative powers. The symbiote also possessed a sense similar to Spider-Man's Spider Sense, which was a sort of danger sense. While it was not as sophisticated as the Spider Sense, it was handy enough in troublesome situations. Antivenom can also sense and expel impurities from a person's body. This includes symbiotes, radiation, narcotics, foreign substances, viruses, and diseases. One of the most interesting features of this symbiote is that it is immune to both fire and sonic-based attacks, which is something that makes it a class apart from other symbiotes who are all weak against these. However, Antivenom has a major weakness. If it overuses its healing abilities for too long, it can become overwhelmed and destroyed by another symbiote. Scream. The Life Foundation, which was trying to provide a comfortable life to its wealthy clients after the imminent destruction of the world, needed a superhuman police force to protect law and order in this utopian society. The head of the foundation had Eddie Brock captured since he believed the offspring of Venom would be the guardians of the society he wanted to create. The foundation then brought Venom to a lab and extracted 5 seeds, and this led to the birth of 5 young symbiotes. However, they were too young to be controlled, and one of them bonded with Donna Diego, who was a mercenary suffering from bouts of schizophrenia. This symbiote came to be known as Scream, and together with its host Donna and 4 other symbiotes, it was one of the guardians of the Life Foundation. Scream attacked a mall in California to test out its powers and came face to face with Spider-Man. When the masked crawler followed the symbiote back to the Life Foundation, he was attacked by the symbiotes together. However, Eddie appeared and merged with the Venom symbiote to defeat Scream and the other symbiotes using a metabolic accelerator to turn them into dust. The explosion that happened as a result apparently killed all the symbiotes and ended their pair bonds. However, due to the efforts of the Life Foundation, they survived, but the symbiotes started enticing the hosts into becoming more violent. Donna and the other mercenaries left the Foundation and tracked down Eddie, wanting his help to control their symbiotes. However, he dismissed them, saying they were lost causes who were just as bad as Carnage. The symbiote's bloodlust, combined with Donna's schizophrenia, was a bad combination, and she started a rampage and would have been killed by Eddie, but he was stopped by Scarlet Spider. The Scream symbiote gave its host a number of powers, such as superhuman speed, stamina, durability, and agility, as well as regeneration, wall crawling, spider sense, immunity to Spider-Man's spider sense, and constituent matter generation and manipulation. However, Scream did have weaknesses, such as its susceptibility to fire and sonic weapons. Hybrid. Hybrid is the joint form of 4 of the Life Foundation symbiotes, Agony, Phage, Lasher, and Riot. They take the hybrid form mainly after they lose their individual hosts. After Scream killed the hosts of these symbiotes, the government took them to a testing facility in the Adirondack Mountains. There, numerous scientists would consistently subject them to torture due to the nature of the experiments being done on them. When the Earth was attacked by an army of symbiotes, Eddie Brock and Venom let out a psychic shriek to wipe off the invaders, and this was intercepted by the 4 symbiotes. In order to survive, they combined into the form of the hybrid. When they were trying to escape, they briefly bonded with Scott Washington, who used to work at the facility. After being bonded to them, Scott realized that they were not evil at all and helped them escape successfully, which cost him his job. A while later, the composite symbiote decided to take Scott for its host and located him. However, Scott was not the same person they knew, as he was consumed by rage and the desire for revenge after the death of his brother Derek, who was killed by gang members who also crippled Scott. After he regained his ability to walk, Scott called himself the Hybrid and went after those he wanted to take revenge on. When Eddie started hunting for symbiotes, he targeted Hybrid and killed Scott. The government subdued the 4 symbiotes, de-infused them, and bonded them to 4 members of the Mercury team so they could fight against Carnage, who was later subdued. Hybrid enjoyed the powers that came with amalgamated symbiote biology and had superhuman speed, stamina, endurance, strength, and senses. A lot of these were the results of the modifications made on the 4 symbiotes when they were being experimented upon by the government. Hybrid was also immune to Spider-Man's spider sense, being a spawn of Venom. Acid generation is an interesting power Hybrid had, which was an extension of Agony's power. Agony also had the ability to metabolic chemical absorption and constituent matter generation. Very strikingly, Hybrid was able to control the emotions of his host Scott, who was in a very volatile state. Like other symbiotes, heat and sonic weapons can affect Hybrids. Another weakness its host faced was the multiple voices in his head, stemming from the multiple symbiotes inside. However, when Hybrid was bonded to Deadpool, this did not seem to affect him, possibly because of his insanity. The Sin Eater. Sin Eater is a powerful and infamous demon who visits the Earth on her whimsy. She came to Earth with a proposition after Rain Sinclair returned to X Factor in New York City while she was pregnant with Rimhari's unborn child. Before meeting with Rain, however, Sin Eater purified and ate the sins of an entire congregation of Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church members before she killed them all. She told Rain that the imminent birth of her child was weakening the walls that existed between different dimensions, which facilitated her arrival on Earth. The Sin Eater offered a proposition to Rain, saying that she could transfer her sins to her child and then have the demon eat it. However, Rain did not agree to this, and along with Shatterstar, they fought off the demon. Being an extremely powerful demon, Sin Eater has many abilities, one of them being metamorphosis. She also has soul-rotting laughter, a characteristic that she says allows her laughter to get inside souls and rot them away. The demon also has 2 prehensile tentacles, which come out of her eye sockets and enter a victim's mouth in order to take a look at their heart and soul. This process apparently cleanses one's sins, but it's not known if anyone can actually survive it. She also has the ability to heal unnaturally quickly and has wings and razor-sharp fangs. Scorn. When the Carnage symbiote was taken back to Earth after the prison break in the raft, Michael Hall used the symbiote to create hybrid prostheses, which would consist of both the symbiote and modern technology. Carnage later escaped and bonded with Tanis Neves and left its offspring within her prosthesis after using her to rescue Cletus Cassidy, its original host. Later, Tanis was taken hostage by Shriek, and she managed to get near the new symbiote and become one with it, forming Scorn. Scorn forced Shriek to use her sonic attack in order to make Carnage weak, and later joined forces with the Mercury team in order to fight Carnage. It can be assumed that the Scorn symbiote was affected by the awakening of the dark god Null, and the symbiote, as well as its host, became the leader of a cult that worshipped Null and wanted to free him from his prison. In order to do this, they retrieved the corpse of Cletus Cassidy, who they believed was the prophet of Null, and stole a sample of the Grendel symbiote from the maker. Scorn bonded the sample of the Grendel symbiote with Cletus's body, hoping that Null would use him as a vessel. However, Cletus and Null would fight over control over the host body, so Tanis offered to go under the knife to extract the trace amount of the Carnage symbiote. However, Cletus, controlled by Grendel, ripped out Tanis' spine and devoured it, which killed her and left the fate of the symbiote Scorn unknown. Scorn, like most symbiotes, had the powers of superhuman speed, healing, strength, agility, and durability. In addition to this, it could generate and manipulate constituent matter and could fuse itself with different kinds of weapons. It could also perform data and efficacy manipulation, cyberlinguism, mechanical morphing, and technoformation. It shared the same weaknesses as other symbiotes, that is, fire and sonic weapons. Marvelous verdict. While most of Venom's adversaries were fellow symbiotes, there are also a few that are not. In this list, Spider-Man and Carnage are obviously the most popular choices, since their incarnations have been the most memorable ones so far. However, lesser-known enemies, such as Sin Eater and Juggernaut, can also hold their own against Venom in a fight. What do you think of this compilation? Do you agree that Venom can best each of these characters in a fair fight? Let us know in the comments below. We'll be back with more content soon, so stay put, and take care. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.